Mike Richardson didn't start Dark Horse with the sheer intention of keeping horror alive in comics, but through the act of granting creators the ability to create whatever comics that they wanted to, the result was here we are almost 25 years later, and Dark Horse is one of the strongest publishers of horror comics today. And I think that, and of a certain kind of horror. That's one of the things we wanted to talk about. And please, again, be thinking about questions, because we're going to be opening up to questions pretty soon. But I want to let Scott talk for a minute about what we sort of look for in horror, what our approach is, what makes Dark Horse stand apart from the crowd a little bit when it comes to horror stuff in general.
Dark Horse had always done a lot of horror stuff, but we weren't necessarily known for it. We were known for creator-owned books, offbeat superheroes, and licensed, licensed books like Star Wars, Aliens, and Predator. A lot of what we did was horror, but I felt like we were being passed by publishers like, I don't really know who any of them are anymore, but a lot of the other publishers that identified purely as horror publishers, but I didn't feel like they were necessarily doing as much or as good material as we were doing. So I looked at the history of Dark Horse's horror, and a big part of what's driven Dark Horse, when Mike started Dark Horse, part of his vision was he wanted to create the new EC comics. And of course, EC had done the best horror comics ever, so horror comics was part of what we were going to do. Mike's sensibilities also naturally kind of tend toward the pulps. He loves Doc Savage, he loves Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, all that kind of stuff. So, and the horror was never stronger than when it was in the pulps, I think. And so horror was just a natural part of what we were going to do because of what Mike liked. And what's driven what Dark Horse publishes has always been what Mike likes. And so in the like 6 or 7 years ago, I started pulling together a line of horror comics. I wanted us to identify ourselves as a horror publisher. And I was looking at the kinds of stuff we did, and we did blend the hero with the monster a lot. We also had we had a strong sense of humor in our stuff with books like The Goon, and Hellboy has a lot of sense of humor to it. We're not afraid to mix humor with horror. Most of us working in it see that as a really strong part of the genre, where you can mix those things up without losing the creepiness of it. And we liked the pulp stuff. We like old-fashioned horror. We're not really, you won't see Dark Horse doing a whole lot of torture porn or that, or even just like generally gory stuff. We have a classic sensibility about our stuff that we like and we pride ourselves on, and we think it defines what we do in titles like The Goon and Hellboy and a lot of the other stuff. So Dark Horse publishes a certain kind of horror comic, but we're really flexible, and we did a book that was pretty much a torture porn book before torture porn was a genre, really. We did something with Rob Zombie and Steve Niles that, if it ever got made into a movie now, you'd call it torture porn, and I don't think we knew the phrase yet, but it would have helped understand what the hell we were doing. So yeah, that kind of brings us up to today and to Dark Horse. Dark Horse has recently relaunched Creepy with Shauna edits. We've relaunched Creepy as a horror anthology in the model of what it used to be, and we like to think that we attach ourselves to some of the strongest names in horror comics. We've worked a lot with Bernie Wrightson. Mike Mignola calls Dark Horse home. Joss Whedon does all his work with us. Eric Powell, people who do very different, very personal kinds of horror get to see their visions through with us, and that's how we like to try to look at it.